Okay, the young lady up the top there has asked the hardest question I can possibly answer. Has making the movie changed me? Yeah, it has, fundamentally. I now live each day by guidance. And I don't get disappointed anymore, strangely. When you really accept the notion of guidance, disappointment kind of drops off.
I just want to say, when I first met Bill, we met up in Big Sur. I was giving a workshop up at Esalen, and we met at Ventana. And I was just struck with the depth of his passion for his journey and how much it meant to him, every single word that people were sharing with him, every bit, the gratitude that he had for the learning and the insight and the transformation. I mean, he was totally open. And it was just an honor being interviewed by him, of course. But to watch the whole process and this beautiful cinematography, just the scenes are just of nature, and the aerial scenes are so beautiful, just strikingly beautiful. I'm very visual, and so I take a lot in through the visual, and I appreciate that so much. And his journey, it's been pure. It's just been pure and genuine and powerful, and it's ever evolving.
Well, thank you. And it is ever evolving, I think. I think for all of us it is. It is a journey. And as I say at the end of the film, it's just the beginning. I think it is for all of us. Because one of the things that that I've found in the making of this film and the screening of it is that people have come forward and told me similar stories to yourself, and what I've realized is that what happened to me is not unusual at all. It happens so frequently. It's just that most people don't talk about it because they think it's just weird, or it's just a coincidence, or they don't give it any value. But what I have come to realize is that one of the primary functions of intuition is to keep us safe. Because if we are on a soul journey, how can we fulfill that journey if we're knocked off early? Michael's probably a better person to talk about this than me. What do you think?
Well, having been one that's been knocked off early 5 times, but you notice I'm sitting here, I've returned each time. No deposit, no return kind of a thing. And once you experience, you were asking about near-death experience and everything, and as far as any of you who live here in Los Angeles, you have to have intuition just to be able to drive here. Yes, you're all alive. But when you've been dead as many times as I have, it's a whole different experience. When you come back, it's so easy to go. There's nothing to leaving. But staying, coming back, now that's the real challenge. And, when Carolyn Mace was saying that, well, everybody has challenges and everybody has good days. It's not somebody special and you're entitled to just good days or just bad days or whatever like that. It's all there. Sometimes people look at me and say, oh, you're supposed to be this great healer. How come you keep on dropping dead? How come you've had a heart attack? How come you don't even have a voice? That's because I talk too much. Yeah, I had a surgery 3 months ago, and when they put the tube in, right, the intubation, the vocal cords got damaged. So the surgery was perfect, but when I came out, I was so happy, I was so joyous when the anesthesiologist came and said, it's time to get up. And I opened my eyes and everything's so beautiful, so clear, because I just came back from life. When that holy man in India said, your life is, instead of being in pieces, it's in peace. Well, that's where I came from. When you turn inward for intuition, it's exactly the opposite of going out into the world and looking for answers out in the world or in the universe. Because the universe, no matter how huge it is, it's limited, isn't it? It's the beginning and an end. There's life, birth, and death. There's limitations. But when you turn inward, it's limitless. And that's why so many people are afraid to really go to their intuition and access that information, because they have to turn inward to that limitlessness. And when you start to touch that limitlessness, at first, it's scary because you can't control it. Remember, right at the beginning of the film, Bill said, I don't know about this. I'm a control freak. But, hey, he had to let all that go to be able to make this film, right? And he had to access that limitlessness that you don't know. You can't control it and say, I want a 10-step plan. I'd like to have a diagram of everything. No, you just turn in and, there's my next step.
But I think it's important to say, certainly as a psychiatrist, I know just by tuning into your intuition, you don't get sudden peace. And, it's the nature of life. You don't have peace all the time. You get more and more peace the more you can develop. So I think it's, inaccurate to say that if you tune in and you listen, you'll get peace. You will. But it comes and it goes, and the more you can tune in, the more you can trust yourself every day, the more it will deepen and integrate into who you are. And my friend Susan asked me a question earlier on about, as you get older, do you find your intuition is deepening? And I answered her no. In the last 2 years, I didn't feel as in touch so much with my intuition, but I realized that wasn't true. I realized that what I do as a psychiatrist, tuning into my patients and listening day after day, year after year, is second nature to me. I don't think about it as intuition anymore. It just becomes how I am, so I don't think I'm tuning into my intuition. But in fact, that seamlessness occurs at a certain point where I stop thinking about it as much, that this is what I'm doing, as opposed to this is what I'm being. And, that's really an incredible feeling, where you don't look at it as something. It just is who you are. And especially in my practice with patients, it comes out. And with oneself, and personal self, it's always harder to read yourself, But that's the nature of it. And, just to go deeper and quieter and deeper and quieter. And when I can't get it, and I can't see for myself, I go to my altar and I pray and I ask for guidance, or I ask for dreams, or I ask for ways to bypass the ego so I can find it, I can get there. And certainly, with medical training, I honor the analytic mind. Of course I do, and I'm really good at using it, but it's not everything. It's like the fraction. The intuition, as in the movie, is the larger reality. And this reality that we see, I think it's a hologram, and it's very tenuous. You get a fever, you go into coma, you become a different level of consciousness, everything is shifted. So how we're perceiving it with healthy bodies and minds and in this particular environment is one view. But things can change very quickly, and like what you were saying, the passing over is easy. Everybody worries about it so much. As far as I can see, it's easy. Maybe, who knows? When you get there, you go through it, but you prepare yourself, as a life that you live, in the intuitive life, trusting and tuning in to the best of your ability to something larger. I think that's what I got from your film. The sacredness and the largeness, and seeing the analytic mind, but so much more. That's such a beautiful, beautiful message. And that kid who was talking about I don't know if what he said is true of the millennials. I'm not sure. I mean, I hope not. No, in terms of trusting, but his fear that if you don't get a career, if you don't get a job, if you don't get money, you won't be happy. As if that leads to happiness. It's a false premise. It in no way guarantees you're going to be happy if you do all those things. The happiness comes from what your film is about. About tuning in and trusting.
Yeah.
And this gentleman over here had a question.
Yeah, I have a question. First, totally fabulous film. Everything was beautiful. I'm glad it exists. And also the fact that it exists is going to speak to the millennials. Honestly, I am a millennial, and on behalf of my people. Your response to documentary.
Yes.
I was most impressed.
Okay, so I do have a question.
Yep.
So I was particularly interested in when you were talking about the intuition as a system, and I really appreciated how all the different teachers responded to that choice of word. And I especially am intrigued, and someone said something about the different energy centers, and when someone points to that part of their body. And also, Judith, I think you were the one that said something really interesting about the subtle energy of the intuition connected with like cosmic energy, energies in nature. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that.
When you tune in, it's tuning into everything. And for me, my path has been mostly of Taoism. And so we have a deep connection to nature. And it's been part of my practice for many, many, many years to be in nature and to sense nature and nature's energies. And without that, when I am not around that, I'm not right. I really need to find that for my balance and my intuition. And, oftentimes, I recommend to patients, I did today, I had a whole day full of patients, and recommended, that this person had a hard time grounding to go be with the trees and meditate there because he couldn't meditate at home. It was too hard for him, but he loved nature, he loved the wilderness, and to go and be with the trees. So I think if you stay in the concrete world too long, you could get thrown off. And that it's important to connect to the rhythm of the earth. And that in turn stimulates my intuition and a wholeness inside, rather than in an anxious world that people live in all the time, striving and doing, and it can be exhausting. But to take that retreat time, and go into nature and tune in. So I think for my intuitive practice, it's just tuning in over and over and over and over and over again. Where I just train myself. It's lovingly, it's something I love to do because it connects me deeper to something inside of me that's so powerful. It's not the part that's frazzled or worried. It's the part that, just is, that's the place I want to make decisions from. You see, but nature can help get you there, don't you think?
If I can just say that pardon me, if there's one thing that I would like for people to take away from the film, it is the notion that intuition is a legitimate system. It's just that science yet hasn't been able to figure out a way to measure it, but it is legitimate. And if you regard it as a legitimate system, then you can develop it and you can use it. And in regarding it as a legitimate system, you demystify it, so that it becomes a part of you. And I think that if people watching this film take that away with them, then they'll be able to use their intuition to their benefit.
What would you say the difference is between being psychic and intuitive? How do people know one from the other? What's your interpretation?
It's all the same for me in terms of intuitive is your inner knowing, and it's your certainty in spirit, the limitless. And when you have certainty in spirit or the limitless, you know, it comes from within you. And just like Dr. Judith was saying in the film, as well as earlier on in the Q&A, she referred to purity, right? Purity of heart. And what's purity of heart? It's when your heart's not divided. So the less divided, the less you're on the fence, and you're less stuck on the maybe in life, and you have more certainty of, oh yeah, I'm not going to, a lot of times people come to me and they're trying to be considerate, and they go, I don't want to bother you, but. Anybody ever do that to you? I don't want to bother you, but I have this question. Well, bother me if you're going to bother me, or don't bother me if you're not going to bother me, but don't go, well, half of me doesn't want to bother you, but the other half is going to bother you anyway. And when you split yourself like that, that's dividing yourself in your heart, and you're on two sides. You're divided. Part of what Dr. Judith was saying earlier with the purity of the heart is, the more she accesses, repeatedly accesses the inner knowing, the less divided you become, the more you commit it, and the more certainty you start to have, and the less divided she's become. You can even see it in the movie. Every time it panned to her, you could see how bright her third eye, the one with the bindi nut, the point that Hindu people document. The dot. Yes, the dot. And it's here, but also it's here. There's two different energy centers there. One is for this earth, and the other one is for spirit. And so the most amazing thing for me is sitting here. I love sitting in front of all of you because I get to see all of you. You're only looking at the three of us. We're looking at all of you. And as I look at all of you, the creativity, the creative power in this room is phenomenal. And how do I tell? Well, besides how it feels and everything, the brightness and the colors. All of you have these tremendous colors. And when you saw Dr. Judith in the film, you can see, and now you can see how bright her third eye is, right? Because most of the time she's starting to really be right here looking, just like that Swami said, here's the control center. And if you sit here and you look from here instead of your two eyes, and that the PhD candidate turned into Swami at the ashram in India, right? From Stanford. She's saying the same thing. All the trouble starts looking through these two eyes at the world and thinking all of this is true. But once you start to use the third eye, and this is what she's talking about with the being psychic. Clairvoyant is a specific term, but it's seeing with your third eye, with the eye of spirit, which is singular, not dual. Like that London banker turned monk, right? He says, it's not duality. There's no this and that. There's no either or. It's singular. It's whole. It's undivided. But you have to use this to see that. And when you start to use this to see that, you start to see how beautiful every single one of you is. How bright every single one of you is. And if you saw yourself the way I'm seeing you now, every morning when you go to brush your teeth and all that stuff is dripping down the side of your mouth and all that, and you get caught up in all that gooey stuff, then you go, I'm having a bad day. But if you see who you really are, and you see the incredible creativity that you're overflowing with, and all the different colors around you right now, each of those colors is a different aspect of your true soul creativity. You're expressing it all the time. You're intuitive all the time, 100%. The only difference between somebody like me or Dr. Judith or Bill, and we're sitting here in different ways looking at you, the only difference is how much we recognize it and how much we have certainty in it and go, that's my next step. That's just my next step. And if you keep on following that next step, just like many people said in that movie, you're going to end up where you've always needed to be. And it's called your destiny. But it's, how can you not be joyous? How can you not be happy? And you have to ask that question. If you have pain and suffering in your life, it's like touching that hot stove. You intuitively know to get your hand off of that stove, right? Everybody knows that. Because it's true. You're not supposed to be in pain and suffering. That's not correct. So when we experience, every single one of us in here has experienced pain and suffering repeatedly in our lifetime. But we have to ask that question sooner or later. Is this correct? Is this pain that I'm feeling, is this suffering that I've been going through the purpose of my life? No. And if you're true to yourself, you always get that.
My one question is that with intuition is really great if I just use it for myself. But when I'm sharing intuition with someone on a road trip, or I'm sharing intuition of which path to take, or should we stay in this hotel an extra night, or should we go to Hawaii for our holiday, or should we go to Tulum, sharing intuition with someone else and co-creating with them and choosing the next step with my intuition with that person, I'm just a little muddled with that. If I'm coming from a co-creative place using my intuition with the people I'm co-creating with. Do you guys have any answers to that?
There's an Australian expression that's used in football. It's called a flick pass. That's what I'm going to do with that question.
I think you also have to be on the same wavelength with somebody. If you're really, playing with them on that level and you're communing and you're lucky enough to have a friend or whoever you're with who's able to go with you to those levels, then you can, say, let's tune in. Where should we go today? And see what images or sights, smells, sounds, knowings, desires, whatever comes through. And then you go, wow, yeah, let's do that. But sometimes people don't want to go there. They'd rather, look down a list and see what looks good. And there's nothing wrong with that either. It's just a different way of operating. So you can't really make people do things that, in ways that they're not used to doing it. But it is fun when you find the kindred spirits and you can really go deep with them and really have fun with them, because intuition is so much fun. It's really fun, and especially when you find other people who can, get it, and you don't have to reinvent the wheel when you're talking to them. So that's amazing to have friends and people around you who can move like that with you, but you can't always expect it, and sometimes people you just do it on your own, and you just say, wow, this sounds like a good idea, and then the other person might want to please you or go along with it, and it turns out to be fantastic. So not everybody, everybody's different. Everybody has their own needs and their own way of dealing with things, and you have to really respect that. And just because it's, maybe not the intuitive way, let's say they want a linear, assessment of something, then fine. I mean, I kind of respect everyone. I think that's what's helped me, especially when I've spoken to audiences of physicians who are very linear, to be able to tune in to where they're coming from. I mean, this is the gift of intuition, and then speak to them in the language they can hear. I find that that's very important, or I don't have to speak to them in my language. It's like I can see the color green and maybe they can't. And so I can't speak to them with that reference point. You see, but intuition is very respectful, especially when you're working with others. You tune into where they're coming from, not you. When you work with others, they're more, they're the most important thing. So you tune into where they're coming from, and then you know how to get through. And you don't even know how you know sometimes, but it just comes. And then you just say things, so you know how to approach somebody in the way that they could be comfortable and then open up more. So it comes through so many ways. Certainly when I'm working in therapy with somebody, it comes through so many ways. But just to respect somebody if they're not into this. Everybody doesn't have to be into this. But hopefully they're really into whatever they're into, and it works for them. So it's just, people are different. this is one way. And sometimes people say, oh, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in anything. I believe there's nothing after this, and I don't believe in intuition, yet they're the best people. They're giving, they're beautiful, wonderful people, so they don't frame it in the same way. And a lot of times people have been traumatized by religion in their early upbringing, so they never want to pray again, or they never want to do all that. That's fine. They find it another way. So you have to be really open, and accepting.
You had a question?
From your intuition, do you feel that you were born with intuition, or you're born into intuition, meaning it's already kind of established and you're invited to join and participate in it?
Well, I can only go from what I've learned from people such as Judith and Michael and the people that I've spoken to in the film. But what I've come to believe is that absolutely you're born with it. You come into this incarnation with it, and the purpose of it is to guide you on your life's journey. You can develop it, and some people suppress it. And society and parenting and schooling and peer pressure and all of those things, and just the mere struggle to survive each day, keep a job and keep relationships and all those sort of things, they tend to push it down, but it's there. It exists within us right from birth and before birth. What do you guys think?
I think everyone is wired with intuition. Just the survival instincts are a tribute to our intuitive intelligence. We were, there's a tiger in the jungle, and we had a sense of staying away, or a sense of protection. And that sense of protection is still present. If you can tune into it, if you can tune into this person isn't really good for me, even though I'm attracted to them, kind of thing. So but that's a human struggle. It's just, that's what you have. I'm so attracted, but they're not good for me. What should I do? So, it's just one of those things. Or, somebody brought up about, oh, I'm offered this job. Was that in the film? Offered this job, and it's so much money, and oh my God, but it makes my stomach sick. What do I do? So, it takes courage to say, well, maybe I won't go in that direction. Or if you have anxieties and fears, to explore those. But if you really have an intuition, this isn't going to be very good for me, even though I'm getting a lot of money, don't do it. I've had worked with so many people who have stayed in that job too long, and then they develop some kind of disease. Because you can't go on too long being off center without your body trying to recorrect itself intuitively. And so, but, if you live the kind of life that I think you're suggesting in the film, of every day tuning in to whether it's right for you, and it has to feel right. It's got to resonate. It has to be like a gong, like, oh, this is good. This is right. I want to go in this direction, or I don't. Or I'm neutral, or I don't feel anything. Then you don't do it. Like, I don't act on anything that I don't energetically feel is right for me. I just don't, because it feels too off, and then my body will respond, and I'll somaticize, and my body will tell me that, oh, this doesn't feel good, so I have to go through my whole body sensations, which is, quite challenging. So, to do every day, listening to your body, listening, and doing what is right on for yourself, and not doing what isn't on. I think that's a courageous life. If you can commit to that, it's a devotion to me, really, to listen to this voice. It's a devotional practice.
Where do you feel, let's say, intuition versus talking to a guardian angel versus talking to a spirit guide? Do you feel like it's all kind of the same thing with different discernments? Just curious what your personal opinions on that is.
With you're tuning in, there's several, you can call them guardian angels or spirit guides, and they talk to you all the time. And so you get that from them. That's when you're experiencing it on a more type of an inner hearing kind of a thing. And then you also have a great level sense of knowingness at the top of your head, where you just know. You don't know how, it just, you know it. So there's a very big difference between those two. But in the beginning, when somebody is starting to lead a more intuitive life, it really doesn't make any difference whether you feel it or hear it or know it or see it. But as you progress, like where you are, you know the difference. And then you can use it accordingly, because your spirit guides aren't going to guide you incorrectly. But there's other beings that are there to distract you and say, look at the birdie over here. And a lot of people end up in mental institutions because they listen to too many voices, and they can't tell the difference between the voice of spirit that's whole and leading you to your fulfillment of your purpose, or listening to some being, psychotic being, that's just going nya 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 nya. And so at that point, you really have to start to have discernment of through what avenue are you receiving this information, and is it the voice of spirit, or is it the voice of what you might call the ego or the divided self? And how you can tell, there's a lot of people have the same question of how can I tell if this voice I'm hearing in my mind is accurate or guiding me in the correct direction? You can always tell. If it's your true intuition, you'll always know, you'll have certainty, and it always, always, always leads you to wholeness and healing, not divisiveness. So if that voice in your head is, or that prompting or that feeling is making you divided in any way, or trying to get you divided in any way, that's not the voice of spirit. That's not your intuition. Okay? That's static. That's stuff that you need to clear out of your mind so you can really hear the voice of spirit and of intuition, and know with certainty that, oh, this is where I need to go to heal, to be whole, to be more limitless, not more limited.
I spent many years trying to figure out what intuition was. Many years. I read a lot of books, and none of it really made sense to me. And I kind of, after a while, I started to realize that what I was reading, it seemed to me that intuition was this word that was sort of bandied around and meant a lot of things, but there was no sort of commonality to what it meant. And I started to kind of try to compartmentalize it. And Judith before talked about a primitive animalistic instinct of survival. And what I came up with, and I wasn't able to include it in the film, in fact in an earlier cut I did include it, but what I came up with is 3 categories for intuition. First off is survival intuition, which is primitive, which is about the survival of the species. The second category is what I call cognitive intuition, which is intuition that's based on past knowledge or expert knowledge, which a CEO might pull from to make an intuitive decision. But it's based on that CEO having that expert knowledge. And the third category is mystical intuition, which can't be rationalized, it can't be put into logic. And that's what that voice was. And that's really what this film discusses. So when I started to think about intuition in those 3 categories, then it started to make a whole lot of sense to me.
So much about intuition is about sensing energy and being open to feeling what's going on in other people, that we're made of these energy fields that extend way, way beyond the body. And I write a lot about empaths. Empaths are people, and it's a form of intuition, being an empath, being able to sense what's going on in other people without taking it on in your own body, which is the goal. But you get to sense the energy fields around people, and to know, I literally can feel, oh, I don't want anything to do with that person, just keep walking. No, I get it really quickly, like, I don't want that, or, this feels good, this feels, like something I want to move towards. So it feels, intuition to me is like a flow. It's like a connection of energy. And I'm always open to that on the subtle level. That means more to me than anything, because thinking about it is, neither here nor there, but feeling it, I could, someone could look good on paper, and yet my energy is not connecting to them, so it doesn't, I don't go there. But if there's a connection with somebody, it's an intuitive feeling that, you feel that link with someone, and then you move towards them, either that or not. And you don't feel it with everybody, but listening to your intuition each day like that can really lead to good health and well-being. Because if you go towards people who your energy is not compatible with, or energy vampires, and you go there, it's a wound relationship or whatever that you're working through, then that's not so healthy. But if you really listen to your energy every single day and say, who is it that I'm moving towards? Is this the person I want to be moving towards? This time is going by very quickly, and so in my estimation, you don't want to waste it. You really want to go towards, what has wholesomeness and character and has a destiny and karma with the person. But you can tell that with your intuition. And you can also think your way out of it really easily. Or if you feel something and your mind goes, oh no, but this is this and that, and then for whatever reason, and you second guess that feeling of energy, and that only leads to problems. And maybe you have to live that a little bit to find that out, but that's what I found. It only leads to problems, and I don't want to even go there if it doesn't feel right. It's just not worth it. It's, the time is precious to me. Using the time well with people and situations and projects, and giving it where it's worthwhile. It's truly worthwhile, and that's gratifying to me. That's like a life well lived to me, as an intuitive life, and being able to follow that. It's very gratifying as you feel on rather than feeling off, and it feels good.
That's how I made this film, really. I say the film was made intuitively, but I never had a list of people that, at the start of the movie that I was going to set out and interview. I was just led from person to person to person. And if it felt right, then I would do it, and if it didn't feel right, then I would veer away from them. And so absolutely, Judith, that, I didn't know Michael Tamura until 2 days before I went to Mount Shasta. And the only reason that I knew Michael was because I'd just done an interview with James Van Praagh. And I didn't know James. This is a dreadful thing to say. I didn't know who the hell James Van Praagh was. Somebody said, you should, if you're doing a film on intuition, you should interview James Van Praagh. And I went, okay. And I spoke to him on the phone, and it felt right, and so I did it. And then after the interview, James said, where are you going next? And I said, well, I think I might go to Mount Shasta because I've heard that it's a spiritual place. That's how this movie was made, if I was working with a producer, that'd tear their hair out.
Can I just say something? That the people he chose to interview were it's such an unusual combination. Just a tribute to intuition. And the Prince of Bhutan. Oh my God.
Well, now, Devon Rose is in the audience here.
Yes.
Devon?
Who is he?
Where's Devon? Devon, mate. Now, Devon organised that interview with the Prince of Bhutan. And tell the audience how that happened.
Each year, I think Beverly Hills hosts the Milken Global Institute. And I had been at the Beverly Hills 60th Gala earlier that day. By happenstance, I happened to wander into the Beverly Hills Hotel, and I'm talking to what seems like a kid my age. And he's flanked by some interesting guys, and after I speak with him, he tells me, one of the guys next to him, the prince really enjoyed meeting you. And I'm looking around, I said, do you have the right guy? He goes, yeah, he's right over there. I'm like, oh, Prince of where? He goes, oh, from Bhutan. I'm like, okay. And the guy talking to me, he's Caucasian, he's not Bhutanese or anything. I'm like, you work with him? He goes, we're working with him. I'm like, oh, okay, in what capacity? And he kind of just gave me a coy smile. I'm like, okay. American guys working with the Prince of Bhutan at the Milken Global Institute, cool. So he gave me his card, and he said, anytime you want to come to Bhutan or speak to the prince on anything you're doing, please feel free to get in touch. So sure enough, Bill had brought up Bhutan one day on the phone, I think. And so I happen to know a guy. And so I sent an email off to his this guy who had introduced me to the Prince of Bhutan. And sure enough, Bill got to interview him, and I think the interview was a little bit longer than the film, obviously, but for what it was, I think it worked perfectly and said everything there was to be said.
And when you let go, and when you just trust in what the universe can provide, the universe will provide. And in this instance, it provided the Prince of Bhutan.
That's how it happens when you're in the zone. And the more you can be in the zone, the more that happens, but you can't make it happen. It just happens on its own. And it's really interesting because I go and shop at Erewhon a lot in Venice, and I've run into 3 or 4 people who are just about to go into a surgical procedure, right? You know, when I meet them and I have a little talk with them and it's helpful to them. And so, you know, it's interesting how you meet paths at a certain time. You know, where you're just going grocery shopping, but then someone else happens to be there who's going through something, and, you know, you say something that's a little helpful to them.
In regards to Devon and the phone call that he made to me when he said, "You want to interview the Prince of Bhutan?" My wife and I were actually in Dallas, Texas. The reason we were in Dallas, Texas was because right at the very start of this film, a Vedic astrologer read my charts and he said, "The place that has the most potent cosmic energies for you to make this film is Dallas, Texas, and you should go to Dallas, Texas to take in the cosmic rays." And so, you know what? We went to Dallas, Texas, and that's when the phone call came in. And that's a true story. Any other questions?
Yes. Bill, where was that epic last
Sure.
shot film?
Okay. The question was where was that last shot film? It's shot on the Great Australian Bight, which is, if you look at a map of Australia, it's that section right in the south. It's a national park. I chose a place where there were no barriers and there were no rangers. I was never going to be in this movie, and then I decided that I would right at the very last. And all that stuff that we shot in the desert was shot in a week.
When you're using your intuition, is that what activates the pineal gland?
That's probably a question best
What's the
answered.
question?
When you're using your intuition, does that activate your pineal gland?
I'm sure it does. It's all, everything is connected, the body, mind, and spirit. And the pineal gland, which is central to the transmission, is activated. And you know, my spiritual teacher says that things go dormant when you don't use them. And so when you activate, in terms of energy perception and intuition and all of that, it goes dormant. But when you can activate it and awaken it as a practice each day, then, you know, everything, you know, I'm sure your pineal gland is very active.
It can calcify, right?
Yeah, they can calcify, but that's why you want to keep everything active and flowing, you know, in your body, in terms of exercise, in terms of strengthening, in terms of meditation, in terms of not thinking that you're limited, you know, that you can keep going, you know, and keep staying in the moment each day. It doesn't matter what age you are. Stay in the moment each day and don't think about the future so much. And that keeps everything active. But you want everything flowing and moving. You don't want to just sit and contract. You know, in the deepest way. Internally, you want to keep everything moving and fresh and physically and emotionally, and not get stuck on the past, you know, in terms of what's happened. And keep moving.
The old days, back in Tibet and even in ancient Egypt, there is a process of drilling a hole in your skull, in between the two halves of the brain. You put a little stick in there, it goes right to the pineal gland, and you kind of...
To massage it?
Yeah, to massage it. But you got to be very careful. I wouldn't do it at home. But now you don't really need to do that. It's all vibration. And so when you asked about, okay, the more you use your intuition, does that open up your pineal gland and you get to see with your third eye? Yes, because the more you start to trust your intuition, your energy and vibration starts to go up towards your crown chakra, toward the top of your head. And as the vibration starts to come up, it hits that pineal gland, and on an energetic level, the pineal gland, it's called pineal, by the way, because it looks like a pine cone, right? And the tip part of the pine cone, of the pineal gland, has a little, like a sac almost, and there's 7 pieces of grit, energetic grit in there. And when that vibration, sometimes called the kundalini, comes up the spine and goes through the pineal gland, starts to vibrate that little tip like a rattler. And when it starts to vibrate, that's the opening of your third eye. And that's when you start to see clairvoyantly. And the more that energy goes, the more you start to see, because it's vibrating faster and faster. It's got to vibrate at the level of, if you want to call it colors, when it gets to green, it starts to turn on. Okay? And then as the higher vibration goes, the more you start to see. But what raises that vibration is unity. The less you're divided in your own heart, in your mind, the more the energy starts to move up and the vibration gets higher and your pineal gland starts to vibrate and you start to see. That's why Jesus said, when your heart is pure, you shall see God, right? And he's talking about when you start to release, let go of all the divisive thoughts in your mind, then you'll start to see, because the energy is going to be up here and your third eye starts to open. You'll start to see as spirit sees, not as these 2 physical eyes of the body sees. Does that answer your question?
In that section right at the end of the film, we talk about the bigger picture. Wondering where we are as a humanity, really, at this point in time.
Carolyn Mace in the film, remember the part where she gets really animated and
Which part?
after she gave the great talk about stupid people. Well, one of the early times when James Van Prague and I became great friends, and we went to his house, and the first thing I see when I walk into the kitchen is a little magnet on his refrigerator door that says, it was right after the Sixth Sense movie came out, and I'm sure many of you saw that. It says, I see stupid people. But anyway, when Carolyn was talking about when she's going like this and all the sensors are on, remember that? And it's absolutely true, right down to the DNA in the human makeup. Everything's turned on. It's already here. It's not someplace in the future. So the intuition is all there. It's just a matter of choice. It's just a matter of recognition of, oh yeah, I'm living intuitively all the time instead of fighting it. So either you're living with it or you're fighting against it, but either way, it's going on 100%. And it's very similar to, for a long time in the scientific, biological, medical community, they talked about human beings are only using 10% of the brain power. Well, I never agreed with that because the brain's working 100% all the time. But why are we only being able to manifest 10% of it? And that's really smart people. is that we're working against it so much. So 100%'s working, but if 40% is working against it, you might only have 5-10% of it working for. And so intuition's very much like that. How much are we working in resistance? Anytime we're in resistance, resistance is always because of fear, right? Always. There's no resistance if you don't have fear, if you don't cater to fear. You could experience fear. I experience fear all the time, practically, because I'm surrounded by people who are afraid. And I'm very intuitive. I'm very sensitive. So I feel all these people's fears about everything. Yeah, almost makes me neurotic. But I don't cave into that most of the time, right? I have my certainty. Oh yes, I'm with somebody who's very afraid of this, this, and this. I look at all of you, and you go through the same thing every day. But a lot of times you don't know you're tuned into somebody else's fear, someone else's anger, someone else's grief. And you think it's yours, but you can't solve it. No matter how hard you try, you can't solve it because it's not yours.
How I started was this. This is what happened. I had been trying to make this film for a long time. That incident with the truck happened in 1999. I had tried for, and probably there are people in this room right now, and I can see a few of them, who know how long I have tried to make this film. Really from that time. And I tried to make the film the way I've made my previous films. And I've made quite a few films. And it just wasn't working. All of the ways of making a film that I was used to and have been successful at just didn't fit with this. And I was at the point of giving up, to be quite frank. After about 12 years of trying to make this film, I was wondering whether or not I was just using my will force to try and bust through, and really what my intuition was telling me, because of all these rejections I was getting, or injections and disappointments and so forth, that I should just give up. And then I had a dream, and this dream, I won't go into the details of it, but the dream was absolutely clear to me. The takeout of the dream was totally unambiguous. I had to make this film immediately. I had to do it with my own resources. I had to just get out and start. I shouldn't wait for, the budgets that I wanted and the crews that I wanted and that sort of thing. I just had to go out and do it. But here's the thing, I woke up out of that dream, like the cliche, sitting straight up in bed with eyes open, absolute clear directive, and I looked across at the bedside clock, and it was 4:44 in the morning. Now, I don't sleep with crystals, I sleep with my iPad. And I immediately Googled, what does 4:44 mean? Because I thought that was weird. And up came entry after entry after entry, and essentially it said the same thing. And what it said was, at this moment, you are surrounded by your angels, your archangels, and your spirit guides. They are urging you to move forward with your endeavor. Know that you are protected, you will be guided, you have to use your intuition, and it will lead you to great success. Okay, so I'm reading this, right, coming straight out of that dream, and I've got to make a decision. What do I do? Do I believe this, and do I move forward with the instructions that I've been given, or do I just put it down as some crazy coincidence, go back to sleep, and in the morning, basically walk away from the film and get on with my life? And I decided to believe it, and that was the start of the film. So that answers question number one. Question number two, how do I balance money with being a creative artist? Well, again, there are people in this room who will know how I finance this film. It started off just with Jennifer and myself. After that dream, I immediately went out and bought a camera, bought sound gear. I then went on YouTube to try and figure out how to use them. I'm serious. I mean, I'm fairly proficient with camera, and as you see, I've got a fair few credits in the movie for camera, but I needed to skill myself. I booked tickets to India, and I knew just intuitively that that was the place that I had to start. I didn't know why, I just knew that I had to go to India. Okay, so I'm in the back of a cab going from the Mumbai airport to the hotel. And in the couple of months since I had that dream, I had tried to line up people in India to interview. because I'm going to start the movie. I need to do something. I need to be a producer, and that's what I've done in the past. I would, set an agenda and go for it. But I couldn't get anybody in India to commit to the film. And I just thought, well, I paid for tickets and I was just going to go. In the back of the cab, I'd been to Mumbai before, and in the back of the cab I had in my mind's eye this image of, a roadside advertising thing. Like a, billboard?
Billboard, yes.
Yeah. And on this billboard, and I had very, very clear type, the graphic and so forth. I'd seen this billboard on a previous trip to Mumbai, and it was the yoga, Mumbai Institute of Yoga. So I thought, I'm sitting in the back of the cab there, getting more and more fretful, because soon I was going to arrive at the hotel with this new camera, new sound gear, and all the knowledge that I got from YouTube on how to use it. And I didn't have anybody to interview. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll call up the Institute of Yoga. So from the back of the cab, I called up the Institute of Yoga and I said, I'm a filmmaker from Australia, I'm making a film on intuition, can I come and interview somebody from the Institute? And they said, yeah, sure, come around tomorrow. So I finished the trip into the city, into the hotel, but I couldn't see the billboard. I thought, that's weird. Where was the billboard? They must have taken it down. So the next day I got to the Institute, and there's the billboard right outside their front entrance, in exactly the same graphic, type font and everything, laid out exactly as I'd seen it. So I interviewed the director of the Institute. She's the lady who does the lovely interview about the mountaineering.
Yeah.
That's such a cool story. And at the end of the interview, I said, because I was curious about this billboard, and I said, what happened to the billboard that you had by the freeway coming in from the airport? And she said, we've never had a billboard there. I said, you must be mistaken, because I've seen it before. And she called in one of her staff members and she said, did we ever do any advertising out on that freeway? And they said, no, we have the sign out the front, but that's all. I mean, this sort of thing happened time and time again in the making of the film. Money came in drips and drabs as we needed it. Private investment, the whole film has been financed through private equity. Small amounts of money, sometimes larger amounts. Money came in when I needed it. When money stopped, I realized, only later, that I needed to grow. I needed to join the dots more. I needed to grow spiritually for me to take the next step in the making of the film. And it's extraordinary that Spirit drip-fed me the money because it knew that I wasn't ready to take the next step. Question 3, does anything surprise me? No. Thank you very much for coming.